Lion Goodman, welcome to Ordinary Visionaries.
Thank you, Robert. Pleasure to be here.
And the first question I ask everyone is, how are you an ordinary visionary?
Well, I've always thought of myself as extraordinary, so I have to kind of tone my ego down to become to the ordinary level.
Right. But actually, you are a human on planet Earth. You're fallible. You're imperfect. You're mortal.
Those are all true. Those are all true. And I think of that as extraordinary. I think we are extraordinary creatures that are unique, that are beautiful, that have flaws and glories. We're made of miracles. We're walking miracles, really. When you think about the trillions of cells we have in our body and how they all cooperate and manage, and we don't have to manage them consciously. They're all auto managing. So I think that being ordinary is being extraordinary first. So that's the first step. Now I can talk about how ordinary.
I wanted to market it as ordinary visionaries. If I did extraordinary visionaries, no one would sign up because they didn't feel they were good enough.
Right.
So.
Well, one of my messages is you are extraordinary because you are unique. There's never been anyone like you ever in the history of the planet and probably the universe. And there never will be again. So you are special, you are extraordinary, and how amazing you are. So that's one of the things I teach is to help people awaken to who they really are, which is an extraordinary being. And then all the rest, all the human stuff it's less important. It doesn't get in our way so much.
So tell us about your work. I mean, you can do some history, background, how you got into what you got into, the main work that you do right now. And so you can really start anywhere. Whatever pops into your head is what you want to share.
Okay. Well, I was born at a very early age.
Me too.
Amazing. We're brothers. So I always felt weird as a kid. Like I was an outsider and looking at other people, trying to figure out how are they who they are. Because I was kind of self-absorbed. I still am, apparently. But I was interested in, I didn't feel normal. I felt strange, different. I didn't fit in. I didn't really attach to anyone in my family. I grew up in a middle-class home in Denver, and I had an older sister, two younger brothers, but I didn't feel close to them. I didn't feel normal. And so everybody I looked at, I was trying to figure out, how do they be who they are? And how can I be like them in order to be comfortable in their skin? Right. And I think that made me a very early observer of human behavior, of human nature. And I grew up really trying to figure people out and figure me out. So that led me to some very early interests. When I was 12 years old, my dad handed me a book and said, here, this might interest you. And it was about Edgar Cayce's life readings and reincarnation. And I was reading the book and I went, oh, yeah, I remember this. And I closed the book and put it away. It's like I remembered that's how reincarnation worked. It was not like, oh, yeah. So I was sort of like remembering what you had for breakfast yesterday, And then I got interested in psychic phenomenon, and I found a book called How to Make ESP Work for You. And so at the age of 13, I was practicing telepathy with my girlfriend and psychokinesis and, all these extraordinary.
Really?
Yeah. Never made anything move with my mind. So that was, I tried.
I'm looking for that person that can do that.
Yeah. But I did get very telepathic, and I was able to see deeper into people than usual. I remember in junior high school, I was looking at this guy, and he was telling me about something or other, and I was looking in his eyes, and I said, "Oh, you had an argument with your mother this morning." And he went, "How did you know that?" And I went, "Oh, maybe I should be a little bit more careful with this, this skill."
And how did you know that is the question.
I just saw the picture, so.
Really?
Yeah. So that was kind of my early years, but I kept wanting to be normal. And after 40 years of study and practice of multiple disciplines, the good thing is I never became normal. So I became more myself and I gave up the idea of normality, which I think is highly recommended.
So let's talk about that a second. I love that distinction, normal. So what is a normal person, which you kind of abhor that sort of uh, label? We're all trying to be normal people, or a lot of people. I want to fit in, right?
Yes. Yeah. Belonging is one of the deepest psychic needs in our psychology and our history, because we come from social animals, apes and monkeys, who rely on each other for survival.
Sure.
And so belonging to the troop is crucial to survival. If you belong, you are alive. If you don't belong, you're dead. It's that simple. And that's why we want to belong. We want to fit in to the troop, because if you are like someone, they are more likely to like you and not kill you. So
Right.
we know Stockholm syndrome. People who are captured by terrorists within a couple of weeks are spouting the terrorists' philosophy
Right.
because their life depends on it. It's a natural skill of aligning ourselves with whoever we're with to avoid being killed. It turns out that all children suffer from Stockholm syndrome, because they're with these big people who could kill them or throw them to the wolves or flush them down the toilet. And so they basically say, how can I be like you so that you will like me more? And so we take on the beliefs and the behaviors and the automatic responses
Sure.
that our parents have. This is why we are like our parents, and why people have been like their parents for millennia. And then we find, as we get older, we find a clique to belong to, and then we become like those people.
Yeah.
Or we join a religion or a church, and we take on the beliefs of that group, because that's how you belong, is you take on the beliefs and the philosophy and the point of view of that group you want to belong to. So
Yeah.
that's why we want to be normal. That's why we want to belong.
And yet there's some of us, and I'm one of them, and you're one of them, that have this radical independent streak. You've studied a lot, you've learned a lot, you've done a million things with a lot of groups, as I have, but it's like now you're kind of, or maybe you aren't, but we're in a place that we just want to be ourselves. Not that you can ever completely divorce your past and all of that kind of stuff. It's so interesting, but I've always been independent. I've hardly ever had any employees, a few assistants once in a while. I just think stuff up. I read, I study, I create things, much like you do. So it's interesting.
Well, and that is the other part of us that's amazing, is that we're also very individual.
Yeah.
And that we have an individuality to us, and we are unique, just like everybody else. So we are each unique, just like everyone. So we have both of those drives. We have multiple drives in us that turn us and change our behavior, and that align us with different things. And so when you study human drives and needs and wants, it starts making sense. It's like, oh, that's why that person did that. Because they wanted to be liked, or because they wanted to survive, or because they wanted to be successful. And by success, it means they have more freedom. So it's really understanding human behavior. That was one of my goals in life, was to understand the nature of human nature, and the nature of human motivation, and
Right.
the nature of human consciousness. Like that, what is that stuff? So that's been my passion, and that's what's driven me to where I got to.
So tell me the kind of things that evolved into in your work over the years. I mean, you've been on your own for how many years doing various things?
Since I was a teenager, I think, since I went to
I
college.
mean, making money at whatever.
Being an entrepreneur, a solopreneur.
Yeah.
Well, so brief story. When I was 26 years old, I was kind of lost. I graduated with a degree in consciousness studies from the University of Colorado.
Wow.
As far as I know, the first degree granted in that field. I made it up. So they granted me my own degree. But nobody was hiring. What's that?
Wow.
Oh, yeah. Nobody was hiring people with degrees in consciousness studies, so I couldn't find a job. I was this weird kid,
Yeah.
And so I found a job selling jewelry and gift items on the road. So I became an on-the-road salesman, and
Really?
I didn't know what else to do, so I did that. I actually started my first entrepreneurial venture while I was in college. It was a catalog of consciousness tools called the Quintessence Catalog of Consciousness Tools. And
Wow.
we got written up by the Village Voice in New York as the Sears Roebuck of the mind. But I also didn't know anything about business, so that failed within 2 years. And so then I went on the road selling stuff just to get away from it all. And I was driving around in a van, RV type van, and really not knowing what the hell to do. And so I was kind of on vacation making some money. And when I was 26, I picked up this guy whose car had broken down in the middle of the Mojave Desert. And he ended up traveling with me for 3 days, kind of took him under my wing and, was helping him out. And then the third night out, he pulled out a gun and shot me 4 times in the head.
What?
Yeah. So that was a life changer.
But he was a bad shot.
Yeah, well, he had been rated an expert marksman in the Army, and he was 12 feet away with his hand propped up, and I was a sitting duck caught between 2 cabinets. So it was either that he was a bad shot at that moment, or I wasn't supposed to die at that moment. So that was a life changer. It made me
Note
real.
to self: do not pick up people in the Mojave Desert.
Yeah, that's a good rule to follow. Yeah, I was very careful about who I picked up after that. So at that point, I realized, okay, I got to get real here. I'm sort of living this hippie salesman life and not knowing what to do. I've got to get real. And so after I
recovered from your injuries after how long?
Well, two of the bullets missed me by a fraction of an inch, and 2 of them bounced off my skull. So,
Wow.
Yeah.
Grazed you, so to speak.
But I had an out-of-body experience. I thought I was going to die. I was out of body and looking down, and I had all that stuff. So that's been written up, and it's a kind of a famous story. It's been published widely, and a movie's been made based on that story as well.
Really?
Yeah.
What's the movie?
It's called The Kindness of Strangers. It's a short film. There's a major motion picture with that title, but actually people can go to my website and find it, liongoodman.com, and read my story. And at the end of the story, there's a link to the 20-minute movie that was made. Anyway, yeah. So that's one of those, like, you get to be famous for 15 minutes. Andy Warhol said that. Yeah, so that was my 15 minutes of fame. So I didn't know what to do. So I was looking for a job, and one of the recruiting companies I went to said, "Have you thought about being a recruiter?" And I said, "No. Why should I do that?" And he explained it to me, and I went, "Well, I don't have anything better to do." So I became a recruiter, and that was a launch of a 25-year career. I ended up starting my own firm, executive search firm. I was coaching high-level executives and helping find people for jobs. And so that was my first career. And during that time, I got married and had a kid and all those things. So I was a householder. But during weekends and evenings, I was doing shamanic practices and taking workshops. And I continued my exploration of human consciousness, which is my passion. Why do we do what we do? What is going on? Where are we in the universe, and why? So I was gathering information for all that time. So for 45 years, I took more than 100 workshops and trainings that were explorations for me. So I was an explorer.
You were a personal growth addict.
I was indeed, yes. Yes, and it was a wonderful...
As one myself, it takes one to know one, right?
Indeed. Indeed, yeah. If you're going to have an addiction, that's a good one to have. So
yeah,
if you have a choice, that's much
Although
better.
it can become a treadmill, Yeah,
it can. It can. Basically, that was one of the drives, is like I still wanted to be normal. I wanted to understand how to be like other people. And it turns out that I just became more myself, which was a better option. Anyway, just like you are
right.
a unique being. You have your uniqueness, and you have your ideas, and so you get to shine as you, rather than being like other people. And that's, I think, really the choice, because the path of becoming like other people and having the money and the cars and the the kids that they have and going to the right schools and all that. It's like, it's perfectly okay. There's nothing wrong or bad with it. It's just a particular choice that leads to particular consequences and a particular point of view. And it's really easy to get stuck in points of view because that's our viewpoint. It's like, that's how we see the world. Anyway, all this time I began looking at beliefs, because I noticed that when there was a big shift in my awareness and my consciousness, there was a concomitant shift in belief at a very deep core level. And so I started studying beliefs, like, what are they? Where do they come from? How do they work? And I took a number of trainings in belief change. And just like the workshops, I would have a great experience from a workshop. For a couple of days, I was riding a high, and then I was kind of back to the same guy I was before. and this was true about almost all the different kinds of processes I was doing, whether it was taking drugs under the moon or or going to psychotherapy or taking a workshop. A couple of days later, I was back to the same me. But every once in a while, something would be a big shift, and I'd have a really different point of view about myself or about others or about the world. And that's when I noticed that it was beliefs at the core. So by studying beliefs themselves, I said, what is that thing that's changing, and how come it's changing? And why do some things work and most things don't? Most things are temporary or partial shifts. And that became my passion. That's what I now teach. I brought all the best techniques together into a program called the Clear Beliefs Coach Training, where I'm teaching other coaches, therapists, and healers and consultants how to clear and change the beliefs of their clients and themselves, because that's the greatest leverage point. It's like Archimedes said, give me a lever long enough and a place to stand and I can move the world. No, I wanted to move consciousness. Give me the right tool and we can move consciousness and change a person's life.
So from the time you had this realization, insight from all this investigation into beliefs, did you then work with individuals as clients for a while?
Yeah, for quite a while, and I'm still doing that. I still work with individuals and help them. It's kind of a combination of healing and awakening and manifesting, because it has to come into your life. It has to change your life to be meaningful. You can change your point of view and change your beliefs, but if it doesn't change your actions and your how you respond to the world, then whoopee.
Yeah, big deal if it doesn't make a difference. So then at some point after a few years, you started to train other people in your approach?
Well, about 20 years ago, I was sitting thinking about this idea of belief change, and I tried other people's methodologies, and there was one that I liked a lot, but they were very proprietary. You had to do it their way, their system, a little cultish. And so I was meditating.
What was that?
It's called the Avatar Course.
Oh, yeah, I did that. Yeah.
Oh, did you? Yeah. So it was. I thought it was great, but you had to do it Harry's way, or you couldn't be part of the game, right?
Right. So did you study Byron Katie at all?
I did. Yeah, and I found that to be partial and temporarily effective. Every technique it works for some people some of the time.
Yeah.
And it works at some level of effectiveness, from not very much to, wow, that was amazing.
Yeah.
But I was interested in what works most of the time for most people.
Right.
What are the techniques and what do they have in common? Because I wanted to understand, I'm always looking for first principles, like what makes this work? And what I realized is that most techniques, like Byron's, for example, it's a mental technique. It's one-dimensional. And the hope is that if you change your mind, your mental mind, it will shift your subconscious. And then there's techniques like affirmations that say, well, it takes a long time to shift your subconscious. So you got to do it over and over and over and over again. And then you got to do it over and over and over again. And then when it doesn't work and you feel ashamed because there's something wrong with you because it didn't work, then you have to do it more often, And that didn't work for me. It's like, I want once and done. Like, what does it take to actually shift permanently, completely, and profoundly in one take? I don't want like this multiple takes. So I was sitting around and I basically said, hey, God, spirit, ancestors, I need a technique that works like this, that's once and done, that's complete, that's profound, permanent. Thank you very much. And 2 hours later, this process just downloaded into me, just like, whoom. And I was looking at it from the inside going, that's really cool. That might work. And that was the core of my teaching, because that technique was so good
Wow.
that it worked to do that. And it's still the core technique within my training, but we now teach 20 different techniques that are all integrated together.
Oh, wow.
So that's how that happened.
So let's get a bit into the technique. I don't think we can cover it exhaustively, but we can probably get to the heart of it.
Sure. What would you like to know?
Well, just give me some of the whatever background, the ideas around it, some of the things that it does. How does it work?
Sure.
Enough for a listener of this to become interested enough, perhaps, to contact you or try out something themselves and see, that's interesting. I mean, I've been a student of this kind of stuff. You went much deeper. I've been a little more, well, we're different, but there's definitely similarities. I got into just to show a parallel, I was working with self-employed people and showing them techniques to attract clients and how to sell and how to do this and do that. And the thing that frustrated me more than anything else was people were not taking action. They were stuck. Not everybody. Some people, it's no problem. I can do this. And I studied NLP. I read 10 zillion books. I read something and teach it to people the next day, kind of thing, to try it. But then I discovered Byron Katie, and that was a big breakthrough for me and then I started doing that and teaching it, and that really helped. It was like, what are you believing that's stopping you from writing a newsletter?
Exactly.
Or giving a talk in public or whatever. And it's just like sort of this belief is like the alien on your face.
Yes. That you're seeing through. Yeah, it's not just an alien on your face. It's like it's a transparent one.
Yes.
And so you're seeing through it without
Yes.
knowing that you're actually seeing through it. And I use the analogy of lenses. We have different colored lenses that we're looking through,
Right.
which filter reality. And whether we're looking at ourselves or other people or the world, those beliefs are a filter we're looking through. So if you believe life is hard, then
it is hard.
Everywhere you look, you see life is hard. Now it's filtering out all the easy parts, but you're getting verification. So all beliefs are self-verifying. You see what you believe. Yeah. So that's why they're hard to change and why they're transparent, because we're seeing through them. We don't know that it's there. So that's one of the principles, is we have to bring from what's in the subconscious up to the conscious mind.
Yeah. I remember doing that process on myself early. I think it was 2003, 20 years ago. And, this is just part of it, and probably only part of what you're doing. It was, if you can't identify the belief, you can't get past it. So
exactly.
I was working on a belief, trying to figure out what was going on. Anyway, I identified it, and it just blew my mind. I realized, that is so not true. And yet I'm acting as if it was. And, I just had this ridiculously huge breakthrough that, for instance, I couldn't procrastinate anymore. Procrastination disappeared from my life.
Right.
For several months. And I just created, so the possibility that comes up when you see through a belief and it disappears it's not insignificant. So tell me more about your approach.
Yeah. So what I realized about the things that really worked, like your experience, that they are multidimensional. Like, they don't just affect the mind. They don't just affect the emotions. They don't just affect our choices or decisions. They affect everything.
Right.
And so the big shifts are multidimensional. Why are they multidimensional? Well, our beliefs are multidimensional because our beliefs aren't just a mental construct. They're an experiential, fully embodied, multidimensional thing because they come from our experience. So whatever that belief was that you had, it came from an earlier experience when you were a multidimensional being, because you always are. And so the approaches that other people take to belief change are usually one-dimensional or two-dimensional, like just say affirmations. That's a verbal approach. Or find out what you believe and recognize it's not true. That's a mental approach. Or beat on a pillow until that old belief is gone. That's an emotional approach. Or, start running instead of sitting around, your couch watching TV, and that's a physical approach, right? So, but we're made up of all these different dimensions. There were like 100 different dimensions of us. There's the energetic dimension, not just physical, intellectual, emotional, spiritual, but there's energetic, there's relational, there's ancestral, there's all these influences, environmental. So if we're going to change something permanently, and this is what I saw in myself, is when I had one of those big changes, they changed everything, just as you described. Yeah. And so then I said, all right, what's the technique that will get to those experiential moments when that belief was formed? And then we can pop it like a bubble, just as you experienced. And most people have had one or more of those experiences. I wanted to systematize it and say, how can we do that every time? How can we, as a coach, how can you create one of those in every session? And that's what I've created. That's what the Clear Beliefs training is about, is teaching you how to use these multidimensional tools to get to that place that you experienced when you went, oh my God, and everything changes. Can I tell you a fun story of one of my clients?
Please.
This illustrates how early experiences can affect your whole life without you knowing it. A multimillionaire came to me, and some people call me the subconscious pattern detective. So he had heard that, and he said, I don't know what it is, but I make millions and then I lose millions, and then I make millions and then I lose millions. And I'm really tired of this process. What's going on? So in a couple of sessions we work with memory a lot. We go back into experiential memory. And he suddenly remembered being about 3 years old, walking on the streets of New York with his mom, hand in hand. And he saw a shiny penny on the ground. And he got very excited. And he reached down to pick up the penny, and his mother jerked him back and said, don't touch that, it's dirty. And he suddenly realized one of those great realizations. Oh my God, the reason I can't hold on to my money is because it's dirty and I shouldn't touch it, because mom said. And with that realization, it popped, and he didn't have to lose millions anymore.
And yet he had this desire and ability, who knows where that came from, to
money.
To put businesses together that made money.
You're right.
He kept finding the shiny penny and having it taken it away from him.
Well, that's the kind of work we do, is at that level of the deep subconscious mind where the belief was formed originally. Sometimes it's indoctrinated by the parents. You're a piece of shit and you'll never amount to anything. Sometimes it's a self-belief. The person came up to themselves, like, I'm a failure and I always will be one.
Yeah.
And then that is the core of the personality. It's the core of the self-identity. Identity is really what we believe about ourselves. And so you mentioned people who you gave instructions to, and then they couldn't do it, right? That was what I found early in my coaching career, is I'd give people great advice and they wouldn't do it. I was, what's going on there? And so,
right.
So write a blog. Well, the belief underneath not writing the blog is, if I say something out loud, I'll be laughed at, just like it happened in kindergarten. And so that's the experiential belief that programmed me to not communicate. Don't express yourself. And there's thousands of them. Yeah.
There's thousands of them, but you see this common denominator, which is somehow, I'm not okay. There's something wrong with me. I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
but also the way we articulate it, different. It might be very similar, but someone might say I'm not good enough, and someone else might be I'm a bad person or whatever. But it's something that is diminishing of ourselves, correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, I'd like to give you and our audience an experience because I traffic in experience.
All
Um,
right.
so close your eyes, Robert, and feel what it feels like to hold the belief there's something wrong with me. And just, I know you know that's not true, but just imagine that it's true. Imagine it's 100% true and feel in your body what it feels like to believe that. And just tell me whatever sensations you notice in your body.
Well, I feel small, isolated, just not okay, kind of sad, or uh,
Mm-hmm.
like I'm a loser.
Mm-hmm. And do you notice your posture changing or any
Yeah.
sensations in your
I
body?
feel a diminishing, you know.
Okay, good. That's enough. So now take that off and throw it away like you tried on an outfit of clothing at the store that made you feel that way. And it's like, ugh, get rid of it. Just toss it off. Okay.
Okay.
Tell me when it's gone. Is it, there you go. Great. Okay, now try on a different belief. Feel what it feels like to hold the belief, I am a sacred and worthy being.
I'm a sacred and worthy being. Okay.
And just feel that as if it's 100% true and tell me what that feels like.
Well, it's an experience of being present and aware in the now, okay, with whatever is happening, being okay.
Mm-hmm. Good. So does it, compared to the other one, does it feel lighter, heavier, more expansive, less expansive?
Oh, it's just awful. Only kidding. Yeah, it's wonderful. Much
Okay,
better.
good. Good. Well, you're welcome to either take that one off or keep it on as you wish, because you get to decide what you believe. That's your choice. So thank you for participating. So what that proves is that our beliefs create our experiences. Now, it's kind of circular because our experiences create our beliefs and then our beliefs create our experiences, right? So they're intimately tied. You know,
Yeah.
how that mechanism works, we don't know. Neuroscientists are trying to figure it out. They don't know either. But it's clear that whatever this filter system is, it impacts our life. And people are walking around with those old beliefs, you know, in certain postures and certain, as you call it, self-diminishment, and they can't break out of it. And so we go and we say, what is that thing? What is that crimp in the pipe of energy? And open it up, and now suddenly the person feels different. They are different. They have a different view of themselves and of the world and of other people. And they can now live from that place instead of from the old place. That's the work.
Makes sense. So, so do you always do a kind of regression, like with the guy with the penny? You know, remember the first time you, whatever. I don't know when, you know, if that was the first conversation or several conversations to get to that. You know, when you're a little kid, how old he was, maybe 5 years old, 3 years old, whatever. You're ridiculously impressionable, right?
Sure. Yeah, we
And
all are.
so you know, I remember things like that through EST, you know, loss, shocking loss, whatever, and you have an impression, and all of a sudden that's who you become,
Right.
or it becomes sort of a theme throughout your life. You know, I'll never be as good as somebody else, or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
So is there one experience or usually several, or do you simply, you know, it seems like you could replay that many, many times over in different, the same theme, different plays, right?
Well, we have tens of thousands of beliefs in us. And,
Yeah,
you know, it's being socialized, learning how to be in the world is a system of beliefs
right.
and behaviors and choices and all that. So we're all composed of tens of thousands of beliefs, and we're all unique in the particular configuration we have. Yes, there's lots of commonalities. There's something wrong with me. I'm not as good as they are. Like we can fit those into categories. But rather than categorization of people, we work with individuals and their unique setup of
Sure.
their psyche, because nobody else had their particular experiences with their parents in that situation. Even
Right.
kids who are of the same parents, they have different parents because the parents for the first child is their brand new parents. For the fifth child, it's like, oh, their parents who've done this 5 times and they know I'm going to be okay, and they don't even care about me. It's like I'm being cared for by the other kids. So everybody has their unique experience set,
Oh, absolutely.
and so
Absolutely.
we work with the individuals and their thing rather than try to do it in commonality, because um, it's like flavors of ice cream. Everybody has their own unique flavor.
It's so interesting that all the things that have shaped us. I watch a video on YouTube, and I can't remember the guy's name, but he talks about rock songs, popular songs, and where they came from and how they became a hit and the story behind the band. It's really well researched and really fun. And yesterday I watched one about the Monkees and their first song and how they, and when I was a kid, I watched the Monkees. I was
Me too.
15 years old or something like that. And I just freaking loved the Monkees. I was into the Beatles and all that kind of stuff. And so I went on searched on YouTube to see if there was any, it's not on streaming, but there's a whole bunch of episodes on YouTube. So I watched one. And I really enjoyed it because it's just madcap humor. Did you watch the Monkees? Do you remember that?
Absolutely. Hey, we're the Monkees.
Yeah.
We like to monkey
And
around.
I just came to love all the four of them, and they just had great personalities, and it was very light. And I saw, how did that shape my life? That particular kind of thing, light, fun. And I noticed I love stuff like that. I love silly, dumb comedy, physical comedy, And it's like I didn't have a choice. I just liked the Monkees, and I watched every episode, and I listened to their music. And so, and that's kind of a positive influence, I would say.
Yeah.
There's no big, terrible, awful core belief.
Right.
But
And so
then,
you get your particular configuration, you get to enjoy those kinds of things. I just posted on Facebook Buster Keaton's famous chase scene where he's being chased by thousands of women, and he's rolling down the hill with all these rocks rolling down, and it just totally delighted me. I studied mime in college because I was delighted by this ability to make people laugh or to have them, imagine in their minds. So we use imagination a lot. We do use going back into history quite a lot, but we have 20 different techniques that we use in order to involve all aspects of the psyche, because you never know what's going to work with a particular person to find the source material. So sometimes it's through the body, sometimes through the memory, sometimes through ideas or concepts. But because we see people as multidimensional beings, there's many roots in. Psychotherapy uses a particular root in. Somatic therapy is another. Meditation is another. So we're all trying to get to, that core of who we became and how do we change it. Because some people are very happy with themselves and they live a life, and that's great. Those of us who are explorers and who know there's something more, or who have the motivation to find something more, we have a unique configuration that drives us forward beyond the standard, beyond the norm. And it's not for everybody, but for everybody that's one of those, we got techniques. we got
yeah,
There's a wide variety of techniques. People
right.
are going and doing ayahuasca ceremonies, who have never done anything like this before. And I think it's great. It's like they're exploring. Most of those are not very smart because there's no integration afterwards, and everybody needs an integration after that kind of thing. But
Right.
but in terms of exploring and opening the mind, and a book is only effective if it's opened, and the mind is the same thing.
That's a good question. Right. So, got a few other topics that I'm sure you're aware of, and that's typology systems. And there's a zillion of them. Starting with astrology. And then there's all the psychological systems like the Myers-Briggs and the all those kinds of things. And of course, the big popular one is the Enneagram.
Mm-hmm.
What are you on the Enneagram? Apparently, I'm a 5, and that sort of does fit into my personality pretty well, unless it's a 6. Anyway,
And then
I've always
there's
had a problem with those systems because they're, you know, if you're all born in March at a certain time, you're going to be. It would never compute with me. So
what is it that bothers you about him? What's the core of the bothering?
The core, good question. The core of the bothering is it seems too simplistic. It seems, I much more resonate with what you're talking about. We're multidimensional. We had different backgrounds, different experiences. Like, what would have happened to that guy if that day he had not seen a penny? What would have happened to that guy if 2 minutes later his mother was hit by a car? I mean, we don't have control over any of this stuff of what happens to us. And so we're formed by all our experiences, beliefs, our teaching, our education, the monkeys, TV, music. So to put it into some narrow category just seems crazy. And yet I had a client that was an Enneagram expert, and I was amazed with what he came up with. It was very impressive. He could know things about you that were quite impressive. So it's.
Well, let's look at an analogy. Science, botany. Science is divided into these categories, right? Botany is a study of plants. Physiology is a study of bodies. Astronomy is a study of stars. Okay.
Sure.
Now, it's a complex universe, but there are patterns, and our mind is a pattern detector. In fact, that's the basis of beliefs. That from the time we're born, actually, while still in the womb, our senses are taking in information. It's overwhelming at first, especially when you're first born. It's like, oh my God, all this stuff is coming in. But the brain mind wants to sort by putting things into categories and patterns, going, when this face comes close, I feel warm and comforted. When that face comes close, I feel cold and prickly. Now, that's an infant's way of categorizing and seeing patterns and categorizing them, because the brain and mind wants to survive. And the way to survive is to identify patterns and then use those patterns to predict what's going to happen next. So it's also a predictive machine.
Yeah.
So the ability so we look at everything, and some people have categorization minds. And so they categorize, like, I'm going to look at every kind of tree and put them into categories and relate which ones are related to which ones and understand trees. It's a very 5 thing to do, right? And we could talk about jazz. Maybe you've got an idea of how to categorize jazz. Why
do I like the kind of jazz that I like?
So in the same way, you could sit and look at a leaf that fell from a tree and meditate on it and see its uniqueness, and hold up another one and see its uniqueness and go, oh my God, these are completely different things. Even if they came from the same tree, their coloration is different because it's fall, and their shape is different. And so we have the ability to see the uniqueness of each individual thing, but also patterns. And so every typology is a pattern identification system. Like the Enneagram, okay, everything fits on a 9 circle. Okay, astrology, everything fits into 12 categories plus all the different planetary influences. Is it Vedic astrology or is it Western astrology? So the mind likes to have categories because then we know what to do with them. Oh, if you're an Aries with a Leo moon, I know how to deal with you. I can predict how you're going to react, and I can manage our relationship better. Right? Or if I know you're a 5, then it's like, oh God, I know you.
or an INTJ or whatever the heck. In
That's right. That's right.
yeah,
So it gives us, the mind just loves that shit.
yeah,
so people come up with unique ways of categorizing, and the history of astrology. People were looking at the stars, going, they got to have something to do with each other. And then they watched for patterns. They went, oh, people who have this configuration when they were born are kind of like that. So let's write that down. And then they make a rule out of it. If you have this and this, then you are one of those people. So anyway,
yeah,
so it's just what the mind loves to do.
yeah, true. Well, it's funny that you can take almost any collection of facts and evidence and whatever and make your own story about it.
Absolutely.
So, why is it some people that think Donald Trump is basically a god, and some people think he's basically the devil, and it's like, we're seeing the same thing, we're hearing the same talks, we're seeing the same behavior, and yet it's all filtered through a certain kind of perspective, belief, education.
Exactly.
And we're not aware of that. I mean,
That's
he is God, he is the devil. It's so interesting.
It is exactly what you said. It's that we all have different set of lenses we look through to see, and those lenses are based on our history, and not just our own personal history, but also on our ancestral history, our social history, our cultural history, the people we're around. We tend to believe what the people around us believe in order to belong. So, well, they all see Trump as a god, therefore Trump must be a god, and if I believe Trump's a god, I'll be a part of the group. And if I believe differently, I could be tossed out of the group, and being ostracized or being pushed out of the troop is equivalent to death to the monkey mind.
Yeah.
If I get pushed out of the troop, I'm going to be dead within 2 hours because there's predators watching for independent monkeys, right? So it's all part of human nature. It's just part of who we are and how we're built, and the structures of the mind that are functioning. And that's why we can take someone who's having trouble or difficulty in their life and find out what is the structure that they have, their unique configuration of beliefs that's causing them that trouble. And in that case, now we can clear it up if they want to change.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we can't change someone's mind without their permission or without their wanting to, because if you try to convince someone with facts what is
my dog just
what is
came
true,
into the room.
Then they
Be quiet,
simply
okay?
dig in deeper. And they double their effort in being right. So you can't really persuade anyone who doesn't want to change.
Excuse me, I'm giving my dog a treat or he's going to bark.
Okay. Do I get one too?
Sure. These little bacon things are great. I remember, all of this conversation brought up when I was, young teenager. I was looking at religion. I'm from Canada. My parents were from the United Church of Canada or something, and which was kind of a negotiated religion from Anglican and this and that, and kind of mainstream and not extreme like some religions. And I remember going to Sunday school, but at a certain point, I remember having this thought: every religion thinks they're the right one. And I said, that can't be true. Because how can, if everyone thinks they're the right one, none of them are right. So that's sort of started.
Or this one is right and all the others are wrong. That's the other way to go.
But I was, I don't know, perceptive enough to go that the whole religion thing based on belief or whatever, just there's something wrong here. We have to do this ritual, and if you don't, you go to hell. No, and this one, it appeared to me as complete insanity, at some point. So that's when I started really my search and started to read read all these books when I was 18 years old, and I just went that way. So
Yeah, you're one
the
of those people.
what?
You're one of those people. Those what do they call them? Apostates. You're
Yes.
heretic.
Yeah,
You're a
no doubt I would have been hanged as a witch if I lived, and you too,
absolutely.
lived in many years ago. But, one result of all this search, I mean, I got into non-dualism and Advaita Vedanta, and never really got into Buddhism much, but I won't get into my whole story. But the question that sort of occurred to me is, what is beyond belief? Because
Good
it
question.
seems that it's belief after belief. You have one belief that's not particularly productive, and you realize that's not true, but it's sort of like you can't make a hole in water. You get, something else fills it up. It's like, and so it's replaced by another belief. Now that belief might be more productive, contribute to more thriving. So that's not a bad thing. But I keep asking, what's beyond that? What's beyond that? What's beyond that?
I
And,
love that question.
yeah. And so, I'm not going to get into everything I discovered with that. This is your session, not mine. But it was, what is, so just let me ask you, for you, what is beyond belief? What is it to live beyond belief? And
Those are two different questions. So, and both
sure.
important. They're both
Yes.
important. So, you've done Advaita training, or you've done some meditation, and you've experienced being in the non-dual state, I assume. Yeah, you've achieved that state, so you know what it is to be in that state. Is that true?
Well, I discovered that it has nothing to do with any state.
Okay, good. So
So
it's
that's what I
outside.
discovered.
We could say that it's outside of human consciousness. It is pure awareness without distinction. And so that is beyond belief, because beliefs are
Yeah.
all about distinctions.
Yes.
So when you can lift off and take away all your beliefs, what's left is pure awareness.
Yes.
And pure awareness is everywhere, and it has no boundaries, and that's what we call the mystery, right? So
Yeah.
it's a great state to be in. Now, if you were in that state, you wouldn't want to be walking around and crossing streets, because when you cross a street, it's important to recognize that there's a difference between the wind and a bus coming your way. Okay. That's a distinction. And
Yes.
in the worldly world, it's important to have distinctions so you can survive. Now, if you
Yes.
don't care about survival and you walk in front of a bus, and now I went from being non-dual in a body to non-dual out of body. Great. But then you lose your piece of the game. So beliefs are what we use to navigate a very complex world.
Yeah.
And we need beliefs to do that. And you're right, some beliefs are productive and move you forward in life. Some beliefs are destructive and take you down.
Yeah.
We all get to experience what death is, and then we don't know what's after that. A lot of theories, but the point is that we have a choice. You can meditate and get into that beyond belief state, and it's a wonderful state to experience. Highly recommend it. You can take drugs and go into alternative universes and dimensions. Highly
Yeah.
recommend it if you've got a good guide. Don't try it on your own. Right?
Right.
If you have
Right.
a
Right.
good guide, it's a great place to explore. But if you want to live in the world, you need to have really good beliefs that keep you functioning and keep you moving forward, and use them properly. Find out what's holding you back, clear them up, so you have new beliefs that move you forward in life, so you can enjoy life. That's what we're here for. We're embodied in these bodies to have a good time, to create something, to give to others. We have the virtues that move us forward. And when we don't have that, then we're just living a kind of mechanical life. But you can
Yes.
you can go to a monastery, meditate all day, be in the non-dual state. Wonderful, highly recommended. But be sure and come back into your body before you
One more treat.
cross the street.
So what I evolved into is my practice that I learned from a particular teacher is to have moments of just realizing I'm just here, aware, and now. That there's nothing more essential to me than just here, aware, and now. And then I go back to whatever beliefs or whatever, but it sort of grounds you, just I'm here. Here it is. In the moment. We're aware in the moment. And this moment is all there is. So,
highly recommended. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And then you have to, there's a book called Before Enlightenment, Chopping Wood and Carrying Water. After Enlightenment, Chopping Wood and Carrying Water. So exactly. you still have the work to do in the world, and as much awareness as you can carry yourself, as much fullness of awareness that you can be while still being in the world, the better. It's like the more the better, as far as I'm concerned. I haven't found any maximum or any glass wall that says only this much awareness is good. Like the more the merrier.
Yeah, well, I was kind of stuck in a place of trying to find the right beliefs and the right state and the right thing. And all of that is infinite and always moving and always changing, et cetera, et cetera. But I could always come back to what's one solid thing is I'm just aware now. I that's who I am, aware now.
We
still struggle with beliefs, I'm still working on stuff with my relationship and old patterns that came from my family, that really trigger my wife. So it's like, I might know who I am, but my mind sometimes has its own agenda to, not something I chose. It was just, it comes up. I react, she reacts, stuff like that.
That's what is marvelous and what makes us the most interesting creatures on Earth is that we have all this dual and multidimensional nature.
Yeah.
And let's celebrate it. Let's celebrate your difficulties with your wife and my difficulties with my wife, because that's part of being human. Like, let's celebrate our being human and unique and glorious and troubled. And, we're here to learn, not just to be enlightened. So there's lots of lessons to learn. We're here to learn them, I believe, because there's a larger agenda afoot, which is we come into bodies in order to learn lessons so that the next time we come into a body, we're better off. We're in a better place to do what we're here to do, which is to make the world better. Like, there is something driving us toward evolution and driving us toward being of service. We're not here for ourselves. We're here for the whole.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of the very first things I read when I was, 20, I studied Gurdjieff quite a bit. And he said the only real evolution for humans is consciousness, conscious evolution. So we're all approaching it in many different ways. But if we're not more conscious of who we are and what our habits are and what our beliefs are, then we're stuck in a mechanical kind of life.
Absolutely.
We're kind of in this box of it has to be this way and I'm not good enough and all that stuff. After a while, when we've done this kind of work, we see things like this in the world and it just makes us laugh because it's just obviously, I don't know, it's like a Marx Brothers movie sometimes.
It certainly is. But, you've seen the image of drama, which is a happy mask and a sad mask right next to each other.
Sure.
We are these creatures. What makes us dramatic creatures and funny creatures is that sometimes we're hysterically funny and sometimes we're tragic and sad. And our life is made up of this complexity. And so for me, that's the joy of being alive, is to see each person as a unique configuration that's marvelous and amazing. And when we see each other that way, that's when we evolve. People are dying to be seen as who they are and acknowledged and appreciated for who they are. One of the first techniques I teach in my training is called the appreciation process. And it's a way of It's a way of seeing someone and appreciating who they are as a being, a unique, amazing being, and also their stuff, their creation. What did they create in their life? Their troubles and their glories and their, the material things and their families, and to appreciate both simultaneously, who they are as a being and what their creation is. If their creation is a tragic story of addiction and suicide attempts, that you can look at that as a work of art. In the same way that a friend who's an artist says, "Look, I just made this painting," and you go, "Wow, that's some painting." And inside your head, you're going, "I would never hang that on my wall. I don't think everybody ever will." But you're appreciating the fact that it was a creation. It's like, wow, that is an amazing creation that you did. Look how much care you put into it and how much you love it. And so you can appreciate someone's creation in their life and who they are in essence at the same time. That's when people feel seen and heard and loved. And we all are looking for that same thing, always, all the time, from everybody. And so if you learn how to do that, then you're walking around giving people that gift of attention and appreciation, being seen and being loved.
Well, with that, I think you've summed it up beautifully, Lion. Really enjoyed meeting with you today and discussing this with a fellow traveler in the journey. Thank you very, very much for taking the time today.
Thank you for having me on your program. It's been a delight, and I look forward to more. More is good.
We'll see. This thing with Ordinary Visionaries keeps evolving, and I'm looking at other things to do with it.
Well, keep going. You're doing great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Robert.